Hello, I am so glad to be back. I have missed you so much. I really have. I'm sorry. I have been going through a lot personally, and I just really needed to take care of myself. And I was not in a place where I could be really creating long term videos to do that. And I really barely posted on a lot of other places I normally post, like TikTok and Instagram. So, the good news is I have something really exciting to share with you that I'm going to be holding on my computer now to show you today. Is that as a result of many things, I wanted to create a more personalized and in-depth way to also share with you. And I discovered through an amazing referral the Substack app. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's basically, I know, I thought no one reads newsletters, but here's the thing about them. You can make videos, you can make audio files, you can write, and I do love to write. So I'm going to write a little bit each time, each week on Sundays, and also post content, video content. I will only be posting there. Everything from, especially if the other app leaves, the wonderful breakdowns of analyzing film and TV shows with therapy techniques, autoimmune disease, chronic stress, how to reduce those things through inflammation, through recipes in your body, because I do love to cook, and really content around trauma and autism, and what I'm calling the art of isolation, because I do believe it's an art. I just want to show you really quickly what Substack looks like. It's free right now. I'm just going to post everything for free. Eventually, I may create, tiered content, but right now I just want to share everything I can with you. So let me just show you really quickly, and I would love for you to follow me there. For example, I'm going to post today's video on autism and friendships, but on that Substack, on my first newsletter, among other things, I'm going to post a video about autism and what it's looked like for women, especially in school, and how that has gone in terms of diagnoses and relationships and academia and all of that. It's pretty fascinating. And so it really is about this feeling of like always feeling like you were on the outside. So let me just show you really quickly, and then we'll get to the video, I promise. Okay. So please follow me on Substack. And like I said, I would love to. There are some ways to also engage with a community there. I'll be figuring out how to use that feature. I can't answer personal questions about diagnosing things, but I can definitely, I want to engage with you and learn about things you want me to talk about and stuff like that. It just feels like a more personal way and a hub. So my plan is once a week to post a newsletter on Substack, and it will, like I said, be trauma, autism, chronic stress and illness, probably a recipe, autoimmune, movies, TV, film, breakdowns, things like that. And everything I can think of to share with you in healthier ways, especially if you are an isolator like I am. Okay, so let's get into today's video. I know this was a long intro, but I'm super excited. I've been really building this Substack, and it's also a way for you to receive information from me and news, once a week, anything that's updated. I can also add things like book recommendations, book reviews, whatever, stuff like that. Okay. So the research is clear. For those of us who identify as girls and women and who have been often socialized to be, a version of what we've been taught looks like what girls and women are supposed to do, when you have something like neurodivergence, autism, ADHD, and certainly even complex trauma to a certain extent, it really changes the way you see yourself and relationships and the way that you think you are expected to do so. Now, I know there's a lot of overlap with complex trauma, but for today, let's pretend that we're talking about autistic girls and women who also most likely have trauma as a result. Number one, there are actually 11 of these. Number one, masking demands that have existed since birth as a result of your gender-driven expectations. What I mean is that from the moment you started realizing that whatever you were doing as a child or infant or young girl was not acceptable, that you learn again and again to start shaping it for acceptance and love and to reduce anxiety in whatever ways you can, if you even can. And so you can start masking so much that you don't even really know who you are. And that can make a huge difference. I will say this is a good example. Now, in part, it's also about getting comfortable here. But if you go back and look at, and I've made like 500 videos here, my earlier videos, my kids, for example, were so great and so supportive on TikTok and here, but they always said like, you're not really, you're doing great. We're proud of you, but that's not necessarily who you are. So I was doing my public version of a psychologist, which I still believe it's important to, present as ethical and responsible, but I don't like or trust anyone who gets on this app or anywhere else and tells you that they know everything and it's only one way. And those like kind of like guru therapists that act like it's like they have it all figured out. My challenge is coming across as confident, but also not like selling you some nonsense that I know that life is more complicated because of, right? So because I actually don't have the black and white version of autism, I think. I have let's look at all the options. And so for me, it's like, I think that's important. But the point is, if you look at those old videos and you hopefully see me now on content, whether I'm flapping my hands around or saying like 5,000 times as I always have, because I've raised 4 teenagers and well, mostly adults now. Only one is actually still in the teens. Or I'm just like a little bit on. It's because of obviously my anxiety and all that, but really I think it's in large part been masking. And as I've worked to take that down, I think you could probably see the difference. Number 2. Massive. Making friendships for girls with autism is extremely hard to women because I think my huge thing is hypervigilance, being chronically vigilant, paying attention to everything and everyone, tone of voice, mood changes, micro expression shifts, the energy in the room, all of that, like that comes out of a traumatic childhood as well. And I think when you are autistic, you are often wired for that. And if you have the more empathic type where you are overly empathic, you're really picking up on all those things, but often not knowing what to do with them. Then you have pattern recognition, right? So we can be so good. This is why I swear, although my kids laugh sometimes, I'm actually the most not woo-woo person, all respect to woo-woo, but I kind of can be a little psychic. Like I swear to God, I'll think of a patient I haven't seen in years and they'll text me like that. There's been so many things. It's really, I think though, about patterns, right? More often than not. So the combination of like, I can see through what you're doing and I know what this means from a pattern perspective can make us not very good in social situations, either because we think it's BS and we can't be fake. That was my challenge. I refuse to kiss the ring and act like that. That person is full of it, whatever it is. And even if we're trying to mask it, I think we often struggle to hide our like, what is that about? Or our rejection, or maybe our own fears about, well, I can't be like these girls are being. And so I'll try and I'll fail at it and it'll be obvious, or I won't try at all and that will come across as standoffish. The point is, it's kind of a superpower to be able to do that, but it actually, I think, in the long run can make you more disconnected from people than connected. Number 3, relational aggression. Now, I do believe, as I had 3 sons and a daughter, that when my daughter was in kindergarten, I've said it in multiple places, I could not believe that she would come home and say, so-and-so isn't my friend or won't play with me. None of my boys said that. Now, I'm not saying my boys didn't struggle socially because they did each of them in their own ways. And as I've shared, we've all struggled, I think, in me raising them in this Orange County beach environment that doesn't really align in so many ways with who we are, but also just me being a single mom in a town full of, not that many single moms, just things like that made it harder. So all these things made it harder, but the relational aggression from the girls to the moms back in the day, I've been at private schools, public schools, there can be this thing where it's like, like a passive aggressive comment, or it can be directly harmful. And depending upon how you receive that, not really knowing like, what does that mean? What do I do with that? did they just insult me? Are they bullying me? How do I respond to these social cues? Do I call them out? You could have a more direct kind of way of communicating if you're autistic, where maybe you just say something like that was rude, or being super conflict avoidant also seems to be quite common among many autistic girls and women. So there's there's a regressive piece too. There's an aggressive piece that we don't necessarily know how to deal with. And like I've talked about, if in your home your mom was like a rager and a screamer, you might be conflict avoidant, but then you don't deal with anything because everything feels like conflict. Everything that's conflictual feels dangerous. The point is, you can really struggle with relational aggression and not know what to do with it. Number 4, making sense of social cues. That's classic, right? So what does that thing mean? What does that body language shift mean? All of it can make social dynamics awkward and uncomfortable. And certainly things like cliques, very common, and the cruelty, it's like you can often not know what to do with that. And so that can make you being yourself and unmasking and trusting and making friends even more difficult. Number 5, social anxiety is obviously very common among autistic individuals in general, and rumination seems to be very common among autistic girls and women. So not only are you anxious about something, you're anxious before, during, and after, and then you're literally chewing on it. Like ruminate is like cows. I think it comes from them chewing the cud again and again and again. And so you just can't stop thinking about it. So you get stuck in this anxious, stressed, overthinking, overanalyzing, overfeeling cycle that can affect if you make friends, if you stop going to things, how you show up, maybe being guarded. Often we can also find ourselves, as I've talked about, oversharing and being like, oh my God, trauma dumping, trying to bond, because often for many, not true for all, but for many autistic people, I think we'd like real deep conversation. We hate the weather talk, but we can try to like circumvent that by too quickly going into deep shares, which can, there is a nuance to that. Like you just can't tell me your whole life story in the first meeting for most neurotypical people and have that go well. You could tell me that and I'd be like, oh, tell me more. But that doesn't always go well in the neurotypical world. Number 6, many of us have described having intense friendships. So one very best friend, which can be great, except for there can be a lot of pressure on that friendship. And especially when you go through changes where you're going through puberty or social changes like high school, you might lose a friend, or you might reject a friend that you think is not cool anymore, but you're not cool either, right? And so there can be this intensity, there can be this sort of like, it can feel almost, it's not necessarily, it could be romantic, but it's not. It's just that there's so many eggs in that basket. We can see intensity in those friendships that can actually be difficult to navigate, especially if you feel like something's changed, they don't care about you, or you're doing something differently with them. Or you're just going through stress maybe and you push them away, but that's your only friend, and now that feels weird, and you lack the social cues to go work on fixing that, and it can go round and round. The next one is difficulty with conflict resolution, as I've mentioned, very common. And a lot of those who are on the spectrum have a hard time, whether it's being anxious about the conflict, but then being avoidant about dealing with it, not knowing how to engage directly and resolve it, and that can cause problems. Number 8, understanding that people can have like a hidden agenda in friendships to make connections, to be popular, to get access to things. And some research talks about autistic girls being good with like getting people to like them, but kind of being on the periphery of some of those groups, right? So they had just enough, they could mask enough to pretend, but it wasn't a fully authentic situation. Or even if they were in the group, which they often weren't, but if they were, they still felt like outsiders and not fitting in. And so it's like trying to just make sense of those unspoken social rules can affect how we engage or don't. Number 9, having a need for routine and as a result being inflexible. Like I've talked about, like if I got invited to a sleepover, if there wasn't a bed for me, I didn't want to go. There were too many sensory triggers with the sleeping bag and the floor and the cat hairs they might have. I mean, I had all those things at my house, but in another environment, it was too stressful. I didn't know that like I know it now, but I just be like, no, I don't want to go. So because of that, needing predictability and all of that, it can make us even more likely to isolate ourselves, to get through something and kind of like endure it, but maybe be cranky or shut down or have a meltdown because we're so triggered. And for many of us, this would look like moodiness and she's a diva, whatever, not knowing what the root of that is can be difficult. Number 10 is being overstimulated, right? Very common for those with autism and ADHD. And all of it, like whether it's a food temperature, like I've talked about, not wanting to eat things if they weren't a certain way, texture issues, light, smell, sound, taste, all of that being overstimulating and us being irritable about it, having a neurological kind of rage response like you can have in misophonia, where you just immediately get angry at someone's chewing. The point is, we have to work on how we share that, but it can be interpreted as being a diva, as I've talked about, I think, in a few videos, that classic old movie, Harry Met Sally, where he says, you're the worst kind, you are high maintenance, but you think you're low maintenance. And lastly, maintaining contact and social connection. For many of us, we can get a text and not respond for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years, that there can be this, and I'm not saying it's necessarily okay, but it can feel like rejection to the other person, this need for us to only communicate on our terms and to kind of shut down at times, and being overstimulated can affect how we're perceived. It can be that we need to isolate, but we don't know how to tell that to our friend, like, I love you, but I just need to be alone. I think this younger generation is doing a better job of expressing themselves. But for me, it would be like, oh, I need to make up an excuse, like I'm sick or I don't want to go, whatever, things like that. Even just like going out for cocktails, especially because so many autistic people have historically used, and all people with social anxiety, some kind of a substance. But that in and of itself is stressful. The smell of alcohol, the smell of weed, whatever it is, having to drink to do things. And then let's say you decide, I don't want to do that anymore. Well, now you can't even bear it anymore because the things you used to tune it out have negative consequences in your life, for example. So all of that, how we show up and how we maintain connection, can really affect how we are, like I'm saying, accepted or rejected, and even how we see ourselves, like, God, I'm such a jerk, I didn't text back again, and now it's awkward. I've gotten to where I just say, like, I'm so bad at this, I'm so sorry, let me make it right. If it's a request to hang out that I didn't deal with because I didn't have an answer, when I respond, I will say to them, hey, can you go on this date? I kind of put myself in a situation to commit. So the point is, we have things to work on, but they're also part of who we are. But it can make the already difficult ability to make friends that much more complicated. So please feel free to add any you think I forgot in the notes down below or in the comment section. And like I said, please go follow me on Substack. Hopefully TikTok's not going anywhere. Instagram, I'm still figuring that one out. But I'll be also posting on Substack, and I will hopefully be posting. My intention is to now post a lot more on YouTube Shorts. The things especially that I was posting, I just have to shorten them to 60 seconds from TikTok, which allowed, as you might know, up to 10 minutes. So it's a much easier thing to make content. We don't have a 60-second limit. But anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. I hope it's validating for you. And it is one of my big goals this year, is to work on building connection and friendship, especially as my last child is leaving the nest for college in the fall. I have really only been a mother for the last 25 years. Yeah, 25 years. God. And it's going to be a new journey for me to work on, and I'm really committed to working on it. And so I'll be sharing parts of that journey with you. So like I said, I'll be talking about that on Substack, on everywhere else too, but I am posting a video today on autism and some research and article about really feeling like an outsider. I'm talking fast. Really feeling like an outsider when you are autistic, especially as it breaks down in school. And hopefully you'll find that video and you'll find me there too. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to be back. I'm talking fast because I'm always out of time, it feels like. That's that ADHD part of me. My brain's going faster than my mouth. And I'm not sure my schedule yet here, to be honest. It's probably going to depend on whether or not TikTok goes away, because there are lots of things that I would like to share, just like movie reviews from like a psych perspective and ways to apply to your own life, that I will not be able to share on that app if it goes away. And so I'm just trying to figure that out. As you know, I was posting every day, and then life got crazy, and now I'm honestly scared to commit to a schedule. So, but I will be here more often than not, hopefully, barring anything else. Anyway, it's lovely to see you. I hope and pray 2025 is a good year for you. I think there's a lot going on in the world. It's been a lot. I live in California, and the fires have been devastating. My house is, this morning I was repacking again things because another high fire warning is coming in the next, tonight and tomorrow. And it's been pretty devastating. So if that happens, I actually, if I get evacuated, I will not post. Other than that, I will. But I do want to say that as someone who has a lot of anxiety and worries and fears, I think there are going to be a lot of us that have a lot of that this year. And I do want to be a place for you to find validation, but also distraction and knowledge and ways to escape living in that bubble that can feel quite overwhelming. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.